The searchlights were shutting down when Officer Miles Turner emerged from the trees, soaked in rain and failure. Beside him, Echo refused to leave, staring at the ground like it was trying to speak. 2 boys missing, no clues, no hope. Yet months later, the truth wouldn't rise from a police report. It would crawl up from the dirt, carrying the name of the town's favorite hero. If you're ready for a story where the good man isn't who you think, and the only witness has 4 legs, hit subscribe and stay with us. You'll want to see how this ends. A light rain drifted through the tall firs, falling softly on the bikes abandoned near the trailhead. The afternoon was gray and quiet when the Jensen boys disappeared. The sky hung low with mist, and the road into Ridge Creek Trail felt as if it swallowed sound itself. Their bicycles lay on their sides in the wet grass, as if the boys had simply stepped away for a moment. But the forest knows how to keep secrets, and that day it kept 2 children. Miles Turner arrived when the first police cars began to form a crooked line along the muddy path. At 46, his movements were careful, as though he measured every step. His Navy K9 jacket was zipped high against the smell of wet moss and dirt. His black tactical boots darkened with rain. Beside him, Echo stood alert, a 6-year-old German shepherd with brown-black fur, slicked with drizzle. The dog sniffed silently at the tire marks, his tail held still, as if deciding something. Miles trusted Echo more than he trusted half the men around him. Echo did not speak, did not comfort, did not lie. He only searched. Victor Hale called for quiet. He was older than most on the scene, 57, with gray hair pressed flat by the rain and a forest green flannel that clung to his shoulders. He carried himself with authority born from years of leading rescue missions in these woods. His voice was slow, deep, patient, like a man who believed loss could be reasoned with. He told the crowd that he would lead the search, that they would not rest until the boys returned home. Mothers cried, and strangers touched each other's shoulders as if borrowing strength. People wanted to believe him. They needed someone to follow. Search teams fanned into the trees. Boots sank into mud, softened by weeks of drizzle. Miles and Echo walked deeper than most, guided by the dog's relentless sniffing. Echo caught something, perhaps not a scent, but a feeling. He barked once, sharp and urgent, then pushed forward as if the forest held a path no one else could see. Hours passed, radios crackled, and dusk pressed its cold fingers into the valley. But the boys were nowhere. The light dimmed, and hope dimmed with it. When the order finally came to leave the woods, most obeyed with heavy hearts. Miles stood still. Echo refused to turn back, staring into the trees with quiet urgency. The dog's breathing was slow, steady, as if he understood something no one else did. He barked again, only once, and then fell silent, waiting. Miles knelt beside him, resting a gloved hand on the damp fur. "We'll come back," he whispered, though no one asked him to promise anything. That night, they walked out last. The forest watched them go, rain whispering like a secret too heavy to speak aloud. Echo looked back only once, then followed Miles home, carrying the silence like a vow. A gray morning mist clung low among the firs, holding the forest in a damp and uneasy quiet. It had been 2 years since the Jensen boys vanished. The woods had taken on a different tone since then, less like a place for picnics, and more like a room where no one spoke. Miles Turner moved through it now, older in ways that did not show in his face, but in the weight of his posture. His Navy K9 jacket remained zipped tight, preserving the order he still believed in. Echo trotted by his side, no longer a young dog, yet more deliberate, his brown-black fur glistening with the cold moisture of the forest air. They were not here to chase ghosts today. They were here because of lumber thieves, men who cut illegally, hacking through trees the way greed cuts through reason. The sound of a chainsaw tore through the quiet like a scream. Workers scattered when deputies arrived, but one man was slow, heavy, breathing hard with panic. Miles cornered him near a rotting stump, the man dropping the saw with trembling fingers. He looked to be in his 40s, broad-shouldered, unshaven, wearing a soaked flannel shirt. His voice cracked when questioned, more frightened than guilty. I just cut what they paid me to cut, he muttered, arms shaking as if bracing for a blow that never came. He wasn't here to fight. He was here to survive. Then the forest shifted. Something metallic flashed near the roots of a fallen fir. Not a tool, not a can. A small steel vent pipe, no wider than a wrist, cut open by the chainsaw. Mud clung to it like old blood. Echo stiffened. His breath grew rapid, not with excitement, something else. Memory. He lowered his head, inhaling in shallow, urgent bursts. The dog trembled. It was rare to see him afraid. Miles knelt and pressed his palm to the metal. It was warm, not from the saw, not from the sun. Warm like breath, like someone living beneath the dirt, hidden from weather and law and prayer. The air inside smelled faintly of cooking, of sweat, of life. The workers, confused and whispering, backed away. One removed his cap, not out of respect but out of instinct, as though the ground itself might speak. Echo leaned forward, his body taut and certain, tail stiff like a compass pointing home. Miles felt the echo of a night long ago, the single bark, the promise whispered into the rain. His heart tightened with the heaviness of a truth he had carried quietly. 2 years of failure, of parents aging too quickly under grief, of streets lined with missing posters fading into nothing, and now, under his hand, a pulse in the earth. "Easy, boy," he murmured, though the words felt like they were meant for himself. The vent exhaled a faint breath of heat against his skin. There was no denying it. There were people down there. A thin mist settled over the ground, carrying the smell of cold earth and wet bark. Echo began digging at the base of what looked like a rotten stump. The soil flew backward in frantic bursts, his paws stained dark with wet dirt. Miles Turner watched with quiet alarm. Echo was never careless, never rushed. His body moved with purpose, muscles tight, nose pressed hard against the wood. When Miles knocked on the trunk with the back of his knife, the sound didn't crumble or crack. It rang, dull and solid, like someone knocking on a coffin. He tried again. The false bark didn't break. It only trembled slightly under the blow. Not rot, not nature. Something made to look old, something pretending. He crouched lower, studying the texture. It wasn't wood in the places it should have been soft. It held together too neatly. Someone had layered epoxy, paint, and sawdust to mimic decay. The work was patient, precise, done by a person who understood the forest would guard whatever they hid. Echo pawed harder, panting, not with exhaustion, but with rising certainty. His brown-black fur shook as if remembering something buried deeper than the soil. Miles had known this dog 6 years. He had never seen him tremble like this. With a crowbar, they peeled back a section of the stump's base. It folded open like a stubborn lid. Beneath it lay a narrow hatch door, smudged, hand-built, opened many times by someone who believed the world above couldn't see. Miles lifted it slowly. Warm air exhaled from the darkness, smelling of dust, soap, and faint traces of milk. Inside, the light from his flashlight revealed a small room carved into the dirt like a womb. There was ash in a stone bowl, still faintly glowing red. A baby formula tin sat open on the floor, its metal rim still slick with recent fingerprints. A child's handprint, small, smeared, marked the edge of a rough wooden table. On the far wall hung a child's bicycle, dirt packed in its treads. A ribbon faded by time still clung to its handlebar. Echo nosed the table, breathing sharply. then pressed his head against Miles's knee, body shivering. It was not fear. It was recognition, painful and fierce. A memory returning to him like a scent carried on wind. Miles rubbed the dog's neck, feeling that steady tremor travel into his own hand. "It's someone you knew," he whispered, though he didn't yet know how. He only knew Echo wasn't reacting to a stranger. He was reacting to the past. And for the first time in 2 years, the silence under the earth felt less like death and more like the sound of someone waiting. Rain thinned to a whisper, dripping from pine needles and leaves like quiet breaths in the dark. Victor Hale stepped through the trees as if the forest had opened a door for him. He carried a metal animal trap in one hand, its mesh slick with rain. At 58, he still walked with a straight back and a careful, measured stride, his faded rescue jacket zipped high to the neck, its patches worn by time and pride. His voice, calm and low, carried that familiar tone the town once trusted, steady, instructive, as though every sentence was meant to teach someone how to survive. He smiled gently at Miles, nodding toward the rain. "You shouldn't be out here in this mess," he said. "Come inside my shelter. Warm up. Folks forget the world out here is cleaner than the one we build. Nature is honest." Miles said nothing at first. He watched Victor the way Echo did, quiet, watchful, ready for truth instead of words. Victor held the trap casually, like a farmer holding a basket. Yet the metal teeth inside glistened sharp, crafted by someone who understood how to cage without killing. Victor lifted it slightly, just enough for Echo to see. That was when the dog changed. Echo lowered his body, front paws extended, tail rigid, jaw trembling with a sound so small it seemed to come from deep within the earth. Not barking, not fear, a warning reserved only for men who brought danger. Not excuses. Victor paused, studying the dog as though measuring memory. "Your partner doesn't trust many people," he murmured, his eyes softened with something resembling admiration or calculation. "Animals sense what we hide from ourselves." He set the trap down with exaggerated care, as though trying to prove innocence by performance. The forest breathed around them, thick with wet moss and the smell of old secrets. Miles finally spoke. "You used to design underground storage for the rescue team," he said. His tone wasn't accusing. It was simply a statement, a piece of history held up to the light. Victor nodded proudly. "For emergencies, disasters." He gestured toward the earth as though nature itself confirmed his purpose. Miles looked toward the hidden hatch, still exposed, its wood and epoxy glistening with rain. Victor's face didn't flinch. That calm smile held steady, too steady, built by someone who believed his logic outlasted judgment. Echo pressed against Miles's leg, not cowering but choosing a side, ready to defend it. In that quiet, Miles understood a truth he didn't want. Echo hadn't changed because he sensed danger ahead. He remembered it from before, from a time when heroes weren't questioned, a time when the town trusted the wrong man. Echo's growl deepened, but Miles rested a hand on his neck, steadying both of them with a quiet breath. The rain stopped altogether, leaving only the sound of dripping leaves, as if the forest held its breath, waiting for someone to speak the truth aloud. Miles didn't. He only tightened his grip on Echo's collar, an answer without words. Moist air hung heavy in the underground room, as if the rain above had soaked into the walls. Victor Hale moved with the quiet pride of a host who believed he offered shelter rather than captivity. He set a metal kettle over warm embers and spoke with the tone of a teacher, explaining a safe life away from poisoned society. The ham was small but strangely organized, bunk beds made from wood scraps, clean jars lined on shelves, drawings taped neatly on metal panels. On the lower cot sat Eli, now 10, thin and pale, with a too large knitted sweater patched in brown thread. His eyes were alert but uncertain, dark hair uncombed yet cared for by someone meticulous. He glanced at Echo with a flicker of recognition, as though a lost memory were tapping on a locked door. Nearby, Ryan, smaller and frailer, wrapped in blankets, clung to Hale's sleeve with desperate devotion. His voice shook when he saw Miles standing near the entrance, soaked and silent. Ryan screamed as though facing death itself, convinced he was seeing a monster. "Don't hurt him," he cried, clutching Hale tighter. Hale cupped the boy's head gently, whispering, "They can't understand us. The world above doesn't want children who know too much." His words weren't loud, but they carried the intimacy of belief, a belief carefully taught day after day, like a prayer meant to replace love. Miles didn't step closer. He knew force would deepen the terror. Instead, he lowered his posture the way Echo did, less like an officer, more like someone seeking forgiveness for a world he hadn't saved. The air in the ham felt warm, almost domestic, yet nothing about it was home. Echo approached the boys slowly, tail low, head bowed with an old tenderness, as if greeting a memory rather than strangers. Ryan shrank back, trembling, his breath short and broken, but Eli remained still. Echo reached him first. He pressed his nose to the boy's palm, breathing in faint traces of dirt, fear, and something familiar. Eli's fingers trembled, then steadied. His lips moved without sound at first, then formed a small whisper, fragile but certain. "Con, no." His voice cracked, not in fear, but in longing. Behind those few words lay days of confusion, nights of false safety, stories told as truth, and a single scent that refused to disappear. His memory and Hale's teachings collided, each fighting for the right to define home. Ryan watched, confused and scared. The world Hale built inside his mind suddenly shook beneath him. Hale's expression shifted just briefly, a tightening of the jaw, a quick blink of annoyance. He spoke softly again, but now the gentleness felt like a blade wrapped in cloth. "Memories are dangerous," he said. Miles heard the statement not as philosophy, but as a confession. He gently reached toward the boys, not to take them, not yet, but to show a chance for something real, a life not made of cages disguised as protection. Eli looked up at him, then at Echo, and something brave flickered through his fear. In that silent exchange, a truth awakened. Memory can be stolen, but recognition cannot be erased. A pale hush settled underground, as if the earth itself listened for the next breath. Miles straightened slowly, keeping his voice low and softened by humility. "You did the right thing, Victor," he said. The words left his mouth like stones wrapped in velvet. They were gentle, yet heavy with risk. He met Hale's eyes without resistance, letting himself appear smaller, grateful even. "I won't take them away. Not now. Not anywhere." There was a faint tremor in his tone, enough to echo fear rather than authority. Hale absorbed it, studying Miles with the cautious satisfaction of a teacher hearing a student finally agree with him. The tension in the room shifted, less sharp, more possessive. A man who believed his world was validated could be more dangerous than one who fought to defend it. Echo remained still at Miles's side. His ears stayed low, pupils steady, tail neither tucked nor raised. He understood the balance instinctively. Stillness meant survival. His breathing slowed until it matched Miles's own rhythm, two hearts in a fragile truce. Eli stared at them both, panic creeping into confusion. To him, it looked like betrayal from the only adult who had come for him. Hale stood taller, one hand protectively hovering near the boys as though shielding them from attack. "You see?" he murmured to Ryan, whose trembling eased. He understands now. The world above is chaos. Miles lowered himself to a knee beside Echo, as if seeking support only the dog could provide. His voice turned whisper-thin, just for Echo's ears. Not now. His breath brushed the fur near Echo's jaw, conveying not words, but intent. Echo blinked once, slow and deliberate. A canine promise. He would wait. He would endure. He would hold the command like a kept secret. Above them, almost inaudible, came the faintest scrape of metal on stone. It sounded like a small animal at first, but Miles recognized it. A tactical tool brushing a vent. Dust drifted through the air, barely visible. SWAT was positioning, crawling closer through the ventilation shafts. If they startled Hale, if he panicked, he could collapse the handmade supports of the ham. One wrong move could bury everyone inside. Miles, the boys, Echo, even Hale himself. Hale poured water into metal cups, as if preparing tea for honored guests, his voice floating in the warmth of his own narrative. When you give up the illusion of safety, you find the truth. Down here, they have a future. His tone was soft, proud, convinced. The cups rattled slightly against the table as he set them down. Not from nerves, but from the vibration of boots somewhere above the earth. Miles forced a slow breath. "Let's talk," he said, but it meant something else. It meant keep him calm. It meant keep us alive. He lifted his eyes toward Eli, not apologizing, only asking for trust without explanation. And though the boy's face twisted with hurt, he did not cry out again. In that suspended quiet, both man and dog understood the cost of patience. To save the innocent, sometimes you must wear the mask of the guilty. White light burst like silent lightning, flooding the ham for a heartbeat. The flashbang didn't roar. It blossomed, a flower of heat and brilliance designed to shake the senses without breaking the earth. Miles shielded his eyes, blinking through the haze. In the blinding glow, Echo moved before any human could think. The dog's body cut through the light like an arrow, not with rage, but with purpose. He struck Hale's arm low and sideways, jaws clamping tight enough to disarm, not destroy. The gun tumbled, skidding across the floor. Hale gasped, not in pain, but in disbelief that his world could be taken from him so swiftly. His voice cracked, half plea, half command. "Stay with me. Boys, stay where you belong." Eli didn't hesitate. He grabbed Ryan's arm with a strength born not from fear, but from clarity. The flash of the explosion seemed to burn the fog off his mind. He pulled his brother behind Miles, voice breaking with truth that had been locked away. "There's no end of the world. He lied to us." His cry echoed louder than the blast ever did. Ryan froze, torn between two fathers, the one made of blood and memory, and the one made of stories and fear. His small hand trembled, tightening on Eli's sleeve instead of Hale's. Hale stumbled backward, not defeated by force, but by abandonment. His face aged in an instant, as if belief itself had kept him young. The metal cup he had prepared for tea rolled off the table, spilling warm water like a failed offering. He reached out, not to grab the boys, but as if begging the world to return the certainty it had stolen. His voice shrank into a whisper. "You don't understand. I kept you safe." But the sentence cracked at the end, hollowed by doubt. SWAT dropped through the opening above, black figures against drifting dust. They didn't shout. They moved with quiet direction, trusting Miles's control. Echo released Hale at a single soft order, then stepped back, body tense, watching every small movement. The ham no longer felt like a shelter. It felt like an old wound finally being opened to breathe. Miles guided the boys toward the exit ladder. Ryan's knees wobbled with each step, but he kept going, glancing back only once. Not at Hale, but at the drawings on the metal wall, family pictures, homemade worlds, a life that tried to replace the one stolen. Eli squeezed his hand, steadying him through the uncertainty. Echo climbed ahead on command, turning at the top, barking once into the hollow space, sharp, final, like closing a chapter for those who could not speak. Outside, air rushed cold and honest, carrying scents of rain, pine, and freedom. Miles lifted his head to breathe it in, letting the weight in his chest loosen. Echo stood beside him, tail still, gaze forward. Together, they stepped out of the underground that had tried to rewrite truth. Some doors are not slammed shut. Some are closed by the quiet courage of those who walk away. Morning light drifted slowly across the town, like a shy guest unsure of being welcomed. Months passed before the world above felt fully real to the boys. Courtrooms, questions, doctors, unfamiliar beds. Everything seemed louder than the quiet life they had known underground. Victor Hale, at 58, sat through his trial with the same calm voice that once taught stories of safety. His hair had turned more silver, his back still straight in his plain county suit, as though he believed his actions were a misunderstood kindness. The judge spoke of unlawful confinement, manipulation, psychological harm. Yet Hale listened as if hearing an accusation of love, not crime. His eyes followed the boys only once, not pleading, but yearning for faith to return. Ryan could not meet his parents' eyes. He clung to the idea that Hale might still be right somewhere, in some forgotten corner of truth. He asked to visit the man who kept him, not to say goodbye, but to understand why the world insisted on taking him away. Meanwhile, Eli, older now in spirit, wrestled quietly with a guilt heavier than Hale's sentence itself. He felt like a betrayer, not of the law, but of someone who fed him soup and told him stories in the dark. Healing did not come with verdicts. It arrived in tremors, slow and uneven, like dawn. Therapists worked gently, patient as rain-shaping stone. The town, too, learned something about caring. They built Echo Bridge Youth Center, a place that believed recovery grows best beside trust. Children groomed rescued dogs, teaching them to trust new hands, learning to trust their own in return. Echo became a fixture there, not as a hero, but as a reminder that safety is not the same thing as control. He guided the children with simple presence, steady eyes, quiet breath, never demanding closeness. Some came to him fast. Ryan took longer. One late afternoon, in the warm whistle of wind through the kennels, Ryan stood beside Echo, with hesitant posture, hands tucked near his chest as if afraid to take too much space. Behind him, the world no longer felt like an apocalypse waiting to erupt, but it also wasn't a place he trusted yet. He looked up at Miles, voice barely above a whisper. If he wasn't bad, why did we have to leave him? The question held exhaustion, not defiance. It was the voice of a child sorting truth from affection. Miles sat beside him, his uniform jacket zipped as always, steadying his words as carefully as Echo steadied the ground beneath the boy. Good people can still hurt others, he said. When they stop listening to the truth, they only hear themselves. The sentence settled into the air like slow sunrise. Ryan turned toward Echo, reached out, and gently rested his hand atop the dog's head. No fear, no confusion, just a quiet choosing. Echo exhaled softly, accepting the touch, not with triumph, but with understanding. Sometimes rescue is not teeth nor force. Sometimes it is the memory of what love should feel like. When a lie feels like safety, it can take years to trust the truth again. Healing doesn't always come with loud victories or easy answers. Sometimes it grows quietly, through patience, honest love, and the steady presence of those who refuse to give up on us. Like Echo, some protectors don't rescue with force. They help us remember what real care feels like. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe to join our family of listeners. May truth guide you, and may kindness bring you home.